Hi, this is Mark Pritchard with CloudBees, and now I'd like to show you a slightly different scenario. And I'm going to take a Maven project which I have saved in a repository on GitHub, so you can just follow along with this and fork this and use the code as an example. And here's the project. So it's just MQ Pritchard start CloudBees Eclipse. So there's the URL you want. This is all described in the blog. But what I want to do is just to copy that to the clipboard so that I have the correct URL for the repository. And then what I'm now going to do is let's just go ahead and change to my projects directory. And I'm just going to make a directory here called Eclipse Demo. And I'll cd in there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run git clone. You can do the same here. And I'll just clone that repository. There we go, and that'll create this project called Start CloudBees Eclipse. There we are. And in here, I've got the source code. Let's go back to the GitHub view. I've got the POM file. We'll have a look at that in a minute. We're going to import this all into Eclipse. And then I've got the source tree there for the application. And there's a little, we're going to be working with both local and cloud hosted databases here. So there's a SQL script here just to help set that up. It's a very simple little web application, but we'll build on this and make this more sophisticated as we go forward with these recordings. So let's pop that down. We're now done there. Let's go back into Eclipse. We can close this CB demo project. We don't need that anymore. But first thing we're going to do is through the M2E plugin, we can actually import this as a Maven project. So let's just go here, check out an existing Maven project. I'm going to go here, and this is where I can browse to the product directory. So what I can do is I can come in here to the Eclipse demo. There's my project there. This is the one I want. You can see the Git repository that we just cloned, and you can see the source files there. So I'm going to open that up, and it's found the POM, and it's going to go ahead and create this application. You can ignore this. This is something that you see through subclips. If you actually look, the error message I think is spurious. We do have the Java HL library 1.7 something loaded. It doesn't affect anything we're doing here. So I'll open up my project here. Let's just have a quick look at what we have here. So here's my pom.xml. So let's have a look at the project POM, and let's come down here, and you'll see that I've got a fairly simple JDBC, a web app application. So I've got a class here that implements a JDBC servlet class, and then we're accessing a database, and you'll see how all that works in a minute. So we've got the various Maven artifacts, and we have the reference to the CloudBees repository. And what you'll see a little later on is that I actually have Maven profiles set up that will link to environments that are defined within the CloudBees deployment descriptor. So let's just have a quick look at that, and then I'll explain this in more detail a little later on. But if you look at this, you'll see that I have within my CloudBees web app.xml, CloudBees web.xml, I'm sorry, you'll see that I have multiple environments defined. And what you can see is that here I have a MySQL database that is actually hosted and running in the cloud through the CloudBees platform. And I also have a local database environment if I want to, for example, test my application locally working against a Derby database that's running on my local machine here. And actually the kind of the trick here is that by using these profiles, and then in the profile you see here where we have the Bees Maven plugin, I can actually just put in a configuration stanza with the environment defined. So there's a cloud environment, so the cloud profile uses the cloud environment, and if I come down I have a local profile which uses the local environment. And these are very useful so that I can have a single source tree, and I can use this whether I want to deploy using a local database, or I can use obviously the cloud database. If I'm running my application in the cloud, I want to use the cloud database. I'm not going to be able to access. This is just a little local Derby database I have on my Mac. But when I'm testing things locally, I'd like to have the option to use either database. And it's very easy to do this. It's a great feature of the CloudBees platform. So I'll show you exactly how all that works in a second. So this is just the basic application. We should first, let's just have a look at the databases. What we have here is I've got a local Derby database set up and running. I've in fact created a database in here. I did this earlier on. Again, you can see the connect details here if you come down to the deployment descriptor here. You can see most of the information you need. The rest is here. Well, it's all there actually. If I were to come here, let's just clear that, and then again you can see the database running up here. Let me just skip back because I put these in the history just to save us a little bit of time. So I could have a look at that Derby database. You can see it running there, and again if I go back a little bit, I can run my interactive SQL here. So for example, I can connect to this database and the syntax will be something like this. And I've just started this running on the local host, and this is running on I think 1527 as a default port. The database is called countries, and then if you look at the deployment descriptor, you'll see that we're using a schema owner of Bees, and the password on this is set as Bees as well. So that's my basic connect string. That looks right to me. And then for example, if I want to do a select star from countries, I can do that again here. So there we go, and you can see that I've put it's a very simple app where we've put in some countries and their capitals and so on. So the key thing that you want to watch to make all this work is just make sure that you have your class path set up appropriately with the appropriate, so the derby.jar, the Derby tools, and the Derby client jar, and then you can do all this and you can just run the SQL script which we provided as part of the project just to initialize the database. Another thing that may be useful for you here is, let's just go ahead, we could go ahead and create a new database connection. So for example, I could go and pick up it could be a Derby database, so that I could call this something like Derby, and I'm running this on my local host. So I'll call this something like localhost countries with the name of the database. There we go. And I can go forward now. Now, this is where I have to get these details right again. Remember, you can get all this from the deployment descriptors. So the database is called countries. Again, you can see this here. I've left it in the window. So that's the database name there that I want. You can see it there. Localhost 1527, that's correct. Now for username, we want Bees, and the password, we also want Bees. Now in this case, we're not going to create the database. We don't need to do that. I am going to have the password saved. That looks right to me, and I can just test the connection there. The ping succeeded. That's great. So I can go ahead and create that, and you can see already we can come down here and you can see the schema and so on, and there we are. There's my database and so on. I can do all that, and then again, if I want to, I could just come down here, open the SQL scrapbook. Don't forget to pick the database. I always forget that one, but you can see we're connected to localhost. This is the database connection we want to use, and then I can just repeat that thing that I did through the interactive SQL, where I can select from countries. So I'll do that, right click, execute all, and again I normally do that in the background, but there you can see the results there. Now just to complete the picture, let's do this. If we see here, let me go to my PaaS platform. So I'll just cut back to the CloudBees PaaS console, and here's the application we created just earlier. We're going to create a new one now, but what I'm going to do first is let's just show you that I have a database. So I created a database. I just use the add new database wizard here. It's very straightforward, and you can see here that I've created a MySQL database. There it is, 5051. For free I can get 5 megabytes there. That's active. This is the remote connection information that I want, and I actually prefix all these that I use in the cloud. I always just put an MP underscore, and that's probably a good practice for you to follow. Now that's the information that's going to be important to us, because we're going to need that when we build the data connection. Now, of course, we don't need any of that because CloudBees will find my database. So if I go back to, the deployment descriptors, for example, I'm just going to close that. We don't want that. But if I come back to my deployment descriptors, I don't need any of that information. It's just JDBC Cloudbase and it's MP countries, and I'm good to go. So that's just my database instance, and CloudBees will automatically find it, and obviously I give my username and password. But when I set up a connection directly from Eclipse, then I'm going to need to put those in there. So let's come down here. I'm going to set up a MySQL. So let me just call this MySQL, and I'll just call this CloudBees. I'll probably just call this CloudBees MP countries, just to differentiate this from my local environment there. So I'll go ahead and do that. Now this is where I can put in my the appropriate parameters I need here. So for example, let me do this, and I'm going to come in and I can cut in that instance that we have hosted by default on Amazon, and then I have to give this the correct port. So this is 3306. The schema name is MP countries. So I'll just pick that one up, and you'll have appropriate. This will be different for you, but you just pick them up in exactly the same way. So 3306, and the database name we have to give there is going to be MP countries. So that's going to give you your complete JDBC URL. So JDBC, to use the MySQL driver, that's the address of the instance, and that's the database that I'm going to. And remember my username here, to keep everything consistent, I've called this MPBees, and this is my Oracle background. I'm afraid I've gone to welcome1 as a password. So I can then test that connection, and the ping succeeded. So I can go ahead and create that. And now I can see my database here. I can see my schemas and so on. I can see the various tables, countries, and so on. So I could then go in and I could do a similar exercise. So if I want to, once again, very useful, I can open up the scrapbook, and now I need to get my connection. That's all I need this time. So once again, I can do, you know, select star from. Now in this case, I'm going to need MP countries. This is MySQL now. MP countries.countries, and I can now execute that. And there's my SQL statement running. Normally, as I say, I would put that down into the background, and I'll just have that running in the background. But there we are, and you can see the result here. Now, just one thing to point out, I've done this very deliberately. When I'm working against the cloud database, I only go up as far as Germany, and when I'm working against the local Derby database, I actually include Sweden as well. It's just an interesting way. I just want to double check that I'm going against the right database. So now I have all that set up. What we'll do is we'll just pause, and then in the next recording, we'll go in and look at the CloudBees integration and how I can build my application. I can run and test it locally. I can run and test it in the cloud as well.